Welcome back to Redneck Rantings. It is Thursday, April the 18th, I believe, 2019. We got us a brand new rant. Now, I was going to do a rant about some anti-gun stupidity that I got involved in a conversation with a few weeks ago. That's been kind of chewing at the back of my noggin. And then I get home, and I'm looking through my news feed, and I found a story that I felt that I had to speak out about. I want to talk about a young woman by the name of Nusrat Jahan Rafi, and I do hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. Who is Nusrat Jahan Rafi, you might ask? Well, it's not so much who she is as who she was. She was a young woman who was burned to death for reporting, for reporting sexual harassment. Basically, what happened is that she was attending a madrasa or Islamic school in Bangladesh, and one day the headmaster of the school came in. The headmaster of the school asked her to speak with him in private in his office. He began touching her inappropriately. She became understandably upset. She fled the room. She reported the incident to the police. And the police, while they didn't take her seriously, for instance, the responding officer, the officer who took her report said, well, it's no big deal. Are you sure you really want to do this? And he was recording it recording the interview with his private phone. And her personal details were leaked to the media. They did proceed with an investigation, and she became subject to harassment by the community. There were people who basically mobbed up outside of her home. There was a protest organized by a couple of male students in defense of the headmaster, and against her parents' advice, she went back to school for her final exams. And a friend of hers, and this is where it gets really sick, a friend of hers lured her to the roof of the building where 5 individuals dressed in burqas pinned her down, poured kerosene on her, and set her on fire. Let me just sink that in for you. Let me repeat that. A young woman, and judging by the picture in the article, this is dated April the 18th, 2019, BBC Bengali Dhaka, bbc.com/news/world Asia, and I'll be posting a link to the article in the description. She is, by any reasonable standard, was a stunningly beautiful young woman. She had her whole fucking life ahead of her, and 5 people pinned her down and poured gasoline on her and set her on fire. For what? For reporting an incident of sexual harassment. Now, by any reasonable definition of the word, this is a tragedy. This is a barbaric crime, and I will give props to the local government and authorities in Bangladesh. When she was murdered, what happened is that these scumbags, these subhuman, degenerate, filthy, murdering animals who did this to her, staged this to look like a suicide. Unfortunately for them, she lived long enough to give a statement saying that this was done to her by other people in response to her sexual harassment complaint. And the authorities stepped up and they arrested everybody. They just arrested all the fucking people. Literally everybody involved with this complaint. They're like, you know what? Just to be on the safe side, we're going to slap the cuffs on you so that we know that we got the right person. We're going to get justice for this young woman. This is a tragedy, and it really pisses me off that more people aren't aware of this. I mean, I realize this story just apparently broke just in the last 24 hours. But we live in a world where literally any act of violence against a Muslim is major, major news. Apparently, unless it's Muslim on Muslim crime, and it is, excuse me, highlighting the barbarism, excuse me, of certain aspects of Islamic culture. I will give big credit to the authorities for taking this so seriously. This was a cold-blooded, premeditated act of abhorrent butchery. Maybe butchery isn't the right word because, the connotations of blades, but this was a disgusting act of violence. This was cold-blooded murder in a truly horrible way. This was nothing more than an attempt by an uncompromisingly misogynistic culture to keep women, quote, in their place, to make an example of this young woman, this brave, gutsy woman. This girl is proof that not all heroes wear capes. Some of them wear a hijab, okay? And I know, and I admit, I'm not a big fan of Islam, but I respect this young woman. It really sickens me that this happened to her, and I'm gutted that she died. She was beautiful, she was smart, she was tough, she was strong, she was brave as hell. She stood up and said, no, I am not going to be silent, I'm not going to be a good little girl. I am going to call you out. I am going to name, blame, and shame, and I'm going to demand justice. And she got murdered in quite possibly the most horrific way that I personally can imagine for her troubles. Her name was Nusrat Jahan Rafi of Bangladesh, and she deserves to be remembered. The other thing we need to be aware of is that this is an endemic part of the Islamic culture. I realize that somewhere along the way we developed this idea in the West that that Islam and that Muslim people are oppressed, poor, helpless victims, and that it is somehow wrong to criticize them. Okay, anytime you want to get socially ostracized, all you have to do is criticize Islam. Well, you know what? This cultural equivalency bullshit has to stop. We have to start calling evil evil when we see it. We can't just say, oh, well, it's their culture, and, there's nothing we can do about it, and who are we to judge? I'll tell you who we are to judge. We are thinking human beings with a moral compass, all right? I don't care what anyone says. This was an act of pure evil, and it was not perpetrated because Nusrat Jahan Rafi, a beautiful young woman, an intelligent young woman, a strong, smart, brave young woman, did anything wrong. This was perpetrated because, and I'm going to keep saying her name, Nusrat Jahan Rafi. Remember her name. She's a fucking hero, and she's a martyr in the truest sense. She's a martyr for women's rights. Dared to stand up to the dominant social order, which says that women should not get up on their hind legs and complain when men attempt to take liberties with them, okay? That is the culture in Islamic-dominated societies. And this incredibly gutsy young woman paid for it with agony, the likes of which I cannot begin to imagine. And I've had gasoline thrown on me in an attempt to be murdered, okay? She died as a result of burns over 80% of her body. Think about that. 80% of her body. Look at your body right now. Look at it. Imagine the worst burn you've ever suffered by accident. You grab something hot on the stove, you spill something. Now imagine a burn 10, 100 times worse than that. Imagine your flesh charred like overcooked meat, just the skin falling away. Now imagine that over 80% of your body, okay? They did this to her. This goes beyond a crime. This is sick. This is evil. Okay, this is an abomination in the eyes of decency itself. I'm not talking about God here, because God is, it's a, you know, he's an abstract concept. My version of God is different from my wife's version of God, is different from the Muslim version of God, from the Jews, from the Buddhists. This is an abomination in the eyes of decency itself. And we need to stop this cultural equivalency, this cultural moral equivalency bullshit that says that a culture which says it is acceptable to murder a woman like Nusrat Jahan Rafi for the crime of standing up and saying, no, you cannot treat me this way, is no morally different than a culture that says, if you try that shit, we'll fucking shoot you. Okay? Because where I'm from, if you pin down a woman and pour kerosene on her with the intention of lighting her on fire, we'll fucking shoot you. Okay? That's our culture, baby. They're not the fucking same. We need to acknowledge that while there are many good, wonderful, warm-hearted Muslim people, the culture of Islamism does have some things that need correction. It is very, very much anti-woman. It is a misogynistic culture which says that women are second-class individuals. They're barely human, according to this culture. And they exist for the pleasure of men, and they should accept that when a man attempts to encroach upon them, to take liberties with them, they have no right. This is what the culture says. They have no right to call the man out and try to get him punished because it is his right. He is a man, she is a woman, she is effectively chattel in the eyes of this culture. That is wrong. That is evil. It goes against everything we in the West are supposed to stand for. Equality of sex, equality of creed, equality of speech. I will say it till the day I die. I have personally been fed by good, generous, warm-hearted Muslims. I almost got into a fight. I almost took a guy out and fucking laid him on the fucking ground on behalf of a Muslim neighbor of mine one time because the guy reached into his pocket and fed my family for 2 weeks. Muslim people can be some of the most generous, loving people in the world. I've had Muslim friends, and I was proud to call them my friend. But I'll tell you what, there is absolutely a cancer in the Islamist culture that says that women are unpersons. And we need to fight that. As Western society, we need to stand up and say, no, we will not import this into our countries. If you want to come here, if you want to live here, you need to leave that shit back in the Bronze Ages where it belongs. You need to accept that this is the 21st century, and in the Western world, we accept that women deserve equality of opportunity. They have the same right to equality of education, the same right to equality of speech, the same right to equality under the law, the same right to be free and safe in their bodies and to be able to go to school and get a fucking education without having to worry that a member of administration, the fucking principal of all people, who should have as his ultimate mandate providing a safe and nurturing environment for these women to learn, is not going to grope them. They should have the right to stand up and say, if you touch me in ways that I don't want, I will call your ass out and I will get you in trouble without fear of being set on fucking fire. And I consider myself an old school liberal here, folks, okay? I consider myself an 80s liberal. Let the gay, married Jewish people protect their marijuana plants with legal guns, okay? I am old school, like 80s liberal, all right? And this sickens me, and it should sicken any self-proclaimed 2019 liberal. You need to get off this bullshit merry-go-round of Islamism is beyond reproach. Islamism is not beyond reproach. The ideology of Islamism is very much problematic. It runs directly against our core beliefs. I guarantee you that if some Christian family pinned down a young woman and burned to death, excuse me, a Christian woman for trying to report an act of sexual harassment on the part of a Christian school principal, all hell would be breaking loose. We wouldn't hear the end of this shit for weeks. It'd be the top story across the fucking board for weeks. But instead, it's fucking crickets. Because you can't criticize Islam. You cannot criticize Muslims. You don't want to be accused of being racist or Islamophobic. Well, you know what? It is possible to criticize evil ideas and not be a bigot. We have a moral obligation in this country as the guiding moral light of the world to stand up and call evil evil. And whatever else you want to call it, the atrocity that was perpetrated upon Nusrat Jahan Rafi was evil. She is dead. She is dead and she is never coming back, and her family and the people who loved her will feel the hole in their lives forever. And it was done because of a culture that says women are second or third class individuals and they do not have the right to stand up for themselves. And if they do speak out against a man, they better watch their ass. This was an act of terrorism, okay? This was intended to frighten other women into silence, and I hope the sons of bitches responsible for her death fucking swing for it. I hope they trot these cocksuckers out into the public square, throw a rope over a lamppost, and hoist them up high, and I hope her father and her brothers and her uncles are pulling on the rope, and I hope the cocksuckers dance for minutes. I hope they are a long, slow, ugly time dying, and it's against my faith to wish harm on anybody. If you do this to another human being, you deserve to suffer. I could keep on going on this, but that is that, all right? We need to stop acting as if all cultures are morally equal. This young woman had her whole fucking life ahead of her, and she was snuffed out in a horrible, gruesome, terrifying, nightmarish way. We need to put our foot down, and we need to acknowledge that sometimes bad shit is done in the name of so-called protected belief systems, all right? Nobody is above criticism, and we need to set boundaries. We need to say that we will not import you into our country if you follow this ideology. If you believe this evil, toxic notion that it's acceptable to murder a young woman by setting her on fire, if you believe that, you have no welcome here, and if we catch you trying to do it, we will stop you permanently. We will take a gun and we will put it to your head and we will blow your fucking brains out. Okay? We will fight you using every legal means at our disposal. I am not saying, by no means am I suggesting, that we should perpetrate violence against Muslims, okay? Do not do that. Do not go out and hurt a Muslim just because they're wearing a hijab or a kaftan and that little hat that they wear. Don't hurt somebody just because of their faith. But by God, if you see someone acting in a violent manner against somebody else just because God told them to, step your ass up, okay? And do not sit here and tell me it's not our place to judge. It's absolutely our place to judge. We don't just have a right to judge, we have a moral obligation to judge. And we need to send the message that this kind of evil, now granted, this happened in Bangladesh, but honor killings happen here in the West. They happen here in North America. They've happened in Canada and the United States. The media doesn't talk about them. We need to put our foot down and say, no, this will not stand. Because today, it is Nusrat Jahan Rafi. Tomorrow, it is your sister who is murdered because she reported an Islamist for taking liberties with her, okay? We need to stand up to evil. That is, JFK said it best, all that is necessary for evil to triumph is good men to do nothing. We're the good guys, the people who perpetrate this diseased notion that a young woman with everything ahead of her should be murdered for saying, no, you will not treat me in this fashion. Those people are evil, and we need to stand up to them. That's all. Rant over. Like, share, and subscribe. Y'all have a good night. Peace out.